Elena Vasquez's hands trembled as she turned the brass doorknob to the penthouse master suite. But it wasn't from the December cold seeping through the floor-to-ceiling windows 40 stories above Manhattan. It was the sight that greeted her. Stacks of $100 bills scattered like autumn leaves across the king-sized bed, glittering diamonds catching the morning light, gold chains draped over silk pillows, and jewelry that could fund a small country's budget. $510,000. Maybe more. Just lying there. Waiting. Hello, beautiful souls watching from around the world. Before we dive into Elena's impossible moment, I'm curious. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if this story already has your heart racing, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button because what happens next will leave you absolutely speechless. Elena's breath caught in her throat as she stood frozen in the doorway, her cleaning supplies trembling in her grip. After 13 years of building an impeccable reputation, 13 years of arriving at 6 a.m. sharp to 3 different jobs, 13 years of never taking so much as a paperclip that wasn't hers. This was the test she never saw coming. The penthouse belonged to Adrian Blackwood, the 34-year-old tech mogul whose face graced Forbes covers and whose charity galas filled society pages. She'd worked for him for 8 months, maintaining his pristine apartment with the same dedication she brought to everything in her life. He trusted her with his home, his privacy, his most personal spaces. But this morning felt different. This morning, the universe seemed to be asking her a question she wasn't sure she wanted to answer. Elena's phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from the hospital. Mom's treatment needs to be paid by 3 p.m. today, or they'll discharge her. Her knees nearly buckled. The experimental cancer treatment that represented her mother's last hope required $12,000 she didn't have. She'd been scrambling for weeks, working extra shifts, selling everything she owned, begging for payment extensions. $12,000. Such a small fraction of what lay scattered across Adrian's bed like he was some modern-day Scrooge McDuck. Her eyes darted to the bedroom security camera, its red light blinking steadily in the corner. Was this a test? An accident? A trap? The money seemed to whisper her name, promising salvation for everything that mattered most. One handful could save her mother's life. One small stack could change everything. But Elena Vasquez had never been a thief. And today would determine if desperation could change a person's soul. What would you do in Elena's position? The comments are already flowing with your thoughts. Keep them coming. And if you're new here, welcome to our community where every story teaches us something profound about the human heart. Elena forced herself to step into the room, her worn sneakers silent against the imported marble floor. She set her cleaning caddy down with deliberate care, buying herself time to think while her heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't how her day was supposed to unfold. This wasn't how any day was supposed to unfold. She'd been born Elena Vasquez 29 years ago in a cramped Brooklyn apartment, the daughter of Maria Vasquez, a woman who'd cleaned office buildings by night and dreamed impossible dreams by day. Maria had taught her that dignity wasn't something you wore on your back or kept in your wallet. It was something you carried in your choices, especially when no one was watching. Mija, her mother would say in that gentle voice that somehow carried the weight of mountains. Rich or poor, we are not defined by what we have. We are defined by what we do when we have the power to choose. Elena had built her entire life around that philosophy. 3 jobs, 7 days a week for 13 years. House cleaning in the mornings, data entry in the afternoons, bookkeeping for small businesses in the evenings. Every dollar earned through sweat and integrity. Every client relationship built on trust so solid it could weather hurricanes. Her reputation preceded her in Manhattan's elite circles. The woman who could be trusted with priceless art, with personal secrets whispered during phone calls, with unlocked safes and jewelry boxes left carelessly open. Wealthy families passed her name in hushed, reverent tones. If you want someone who'll treat your home like a sacred space, call Elena Vasquez. But none of that mattered now as she stared at enough money to solve every problem that had kept her awake for months. Adrian Blackwood remained an enigma even after 8 months of maintaining his sanctuary. She knew his morning routine, black coffee, no sugar, financial reports spread across his dining table by 7 a.m. She knew he donated millions to children's hospitals and educational programs, often anonymously. She knew he kept a photo of his late parents hidden in his desk drawer, and that he'd built his fortune after growing up in foster care. What she didn't know was whether the man who seemed to genuinely care about the world's forgotten children would understand that sometimes good people found themselves in impossible situations. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her friend Carmen, who worked as a nurse at Mount Sinai. "Elena, your mom is asking for you. She's scared about the deadline. Can you make it?" The text felt like a knife twisting in her chest. Maria Vasquez had spent her life sacrificing for others, working double shifts to keep Elena in school, skipping meals to buy textbooks, pouring every ounce of love into raising a daughter who could dream bigger than the neighborhood allowed. Now cancer was stealing her mother's time, and Elena was standing in a room that contained the solution to everything, knowing that taking even a single bill would destroy the woman she'd worked so hard to become. She moved mechanically toward the bed, her training taking over. Dust the nightstands first. Straighten the pillows. Pretend the money isn't there, screaming its promises. But as she reached for her cleaning cloth, her fingers accidentally brushed against a stack of hundreds. They felt exactly like the money she earned every day. Same texture, same weight, same potential to change a life. The only difference was who they belonged to. The sound of the penthouse elevator arriving sent Elena's heart into overdrive. Adrian wasn't supposed to be back until evening. He had meetings scheduled downtown until at least 6. Heavy footsteps echoed across the hardwood floors, moving with purpose toward the bedroom. Elena stood frozen beside the bed, her hand still inches from the scattered money, looking like she'd been caught in the world's most expensive crime scene. "Elena," Adrian's voice carried a strange tone she'd never heard before. Not angry, not suspicious. Something else entirely. She spun around to face him, her cheeks burning with a guilt she hadn't earned yet. "Mr. Blackwood, I was just starting to clean the bedroom. I didn't expect." "I know." He stepped into the doorway, filling the frame with his 6'2" presence. Dark hair slightly mussed, expensive suit wrinkled from a morning of high-stakes meetings. But his gray eyes held something that made Elena's breath catch. Sadness. Deep, soul-crushing sadness. Adrian looked at the money scattered across his bed like it was a disease he couldn't cure. "I suppose you're wondering what all this is about." Elena's mouth felt desert dry. "It's not my business, sir. I'll just work around. My father died when I was 7. The words stopped her cold. Adrian had never shared anything personal in all their months of professional interaction. "Left my mother and me with nothing but debt and broken promises. She cleaned houses, just like..." He trailed off, his eyes finding hers. "Just like you do." The similarity hit Elena like a physical blow. She'd never made the connection before, but suddenly Adrian's quiet respect for her work made perfect sense. "She died when I was 15, Adrian continued, moving slowly into the room. "Exhaustion, the doctors said. But I knew better. She died from being worn down by a world that didn't value what she had to offer." He gestured at the money with something approaching disgust. "I swore I'd never let money control my life the way poverty controlled hers." Elena watched him approach the bed, confusion mixing with the adrenaline still flooding her system. "Sir, I don't understand. This morning I received a call from my lawyer." Adrian's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "My biological father, the one who abandoned us, he's been trying to reach me for months. Apparently, he's been following my success in the media." A bitter laugh escaped him. "He wants to reconnect with his son. Claims he's changed, that he wants to make amends." The pain in his voice was so raw that Elena forgot about everything else. The money, her mother's deadline, the impossible choice. This was simply one human being sharing their deepest wound with another. "He's coming here today," Adrian continued. "In 2 hours. Wants to prove he's different now, that he deserves a place in my life." He picked up a stack of hundreds, letting the bills flutter through his fingers like confetti. "I put this here because I wanted to see. I needed to know." "Know what?" Elena's voice was barely a whisper. Adrian's gray eyes met hers, and in them she saw the 7-year-old boy who'd watched his father walk away. "I needed to know if money really does change people. If having access to it, even for a moment, transforms someone into the kind of person who takes what isn't theirs." The realization hit Elena like a lightning strike. This wasn't random. This wasn't an accident. This was a test designed for his father, and she'd walked directly into the middle of it. But before she could process the full implications, her phone rang. The caller ID made her blood turn to ice. "Mount Sinai Hospital." "I'm sorry," she whispered, her hand shaking as she answered. "Hello, Ms. Vasquez? This is Dr. Patterson. I'm afraid we need to discuss your mother's treatment plan immediately." We've had a cancellation in our surgical schedule, which means we could move her procedure up to this afternoon, but only if we can confirm payment within the next hour. The world tilted on its axis. Elena looked at Adrian, who was watching her with growing concern, then at the money scattered across his bed like a cosmic joke. Her mother could live. Today. In just a few hours. All she had to do was betray everything she'd been raised to believe. Ms. Vasquez? Are you there? Yes, Elena managed, her voice cracking. I need a few minutes. Can I call you back? She hung up and found Adrian studying her face with the intensity of a man trying to solve the world's most important equation. Elena, he said softly, what aren't you telling me? And in that moment, Elena Vasquez faced the choice that would define not just her future, but the futures of everyone she loved most. Elena stared at Adrian, her mind racing through calculations that made no sense. Tell him about her mother and risk seeming like she was manipulating the situation? Stay silent and let this moment pass, knowing her mother might not get another chance? It's nothing, sir, she finally managed, but her voice betrayed her. Family matters. Adrian set down the money he'd been holding, his business instincts clearly picking up on every micro-expression crossing her face. Elena, in 8 months you've never taken a personal call during work hours. You've never looked anything less than completely composed. And right now, you look like someone just told you the world was ending. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling exposed under his perceptive gaze. It's not your concern, Mr. Blackwood. Maybe not, he agreed, moving closer. But that call was from a hospital, wasn't it? Elena's composure cracked slightly. How had he known? I grew up around medical crises, Adrian explained gently. I recognized that particular brand of panic. He gestured toward the sitting area near the windows. Please. Sit. Tell me what's happening. Every professional instinct screamed at Elena to maintain boundaries, to keep her personal life separate from her work. But something in Adrian's voice, a gentleness she'd never heard from any of her wealthy employers, broke down her defenses. She found herself sinking into the leather chair, Adrian taking the seat across from her. The money lay forgotten on the bed behind them, though its presence seemed to pulse in the room like a heartbeat. My mother, Elena began, the words feeling like they were being torn from her chest. She has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors said, they said she had maybe 3 months when we got the diagnosis 6 weeks ago. Adrian leaned forward, his full attention focused on her story. There's an experimental treatment. A clinical trial that's shown incredible results, but insurance won't cover it because it's not FDA approved yet. Elena's voice grew stronger as she continued, finding relief in finally sharing the weight she'd been carrying alone. It costs $12,000 up front, and I've been working extra jobs, selling everything I own, but I'm still short. How short? Adrian's question was quiet, businesslike. $4,000. The number felt enormous and insignificant at the same time. That was this morning. But the call just now, they have a surgical opening today. If I can pay within the hour, they can start treatment immediately. Adrian was silent for a long moment, his gray eyes moving between Elena's face and the money scattered across his bed. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight she couldn't quite identify. So you're standing in a room with over $500,000, needing $12,000 to save your mother's life, knowing that taking it would cost you everything you've built. Elena nodded, unable to trust her voice. And I'm sitting here having just told you this was a test designed to see if money corrupts people. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Adrian stood abruptly, walking to the window that overlooked Central Park. My father will be here in 90 minutes. He's going to walk into this room, see all this money, and I'll learn whether 27 years have changed him or if he's still the man who stole my mother's grocery money to buy lottery tickets. Elena watched his reflection in the glass, seeing the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. But you, he continued, turning back to face her, you're not my father. You're not the person this test was designed for. And now I've put you in an impossible position. The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Mr. Blackwood, Elena said carefully, I want you to know that regardless of what happens with your father, regardless of what I need right now, I would never take something that wasn't mine. That's not who I am. I know, Adrian said immediately. Elena, in 8 months you've had access to everything I own. You've cleaned my office, where I leave contracts worth millions lying on my desk. You've organized my jewelry collection, Handled artwork worth more than most people make in a lifetime. If you were going to steal from me, you would have done it months ago. The validation should have felt good. But Elena found herself thinking about her mother lying in a hospital bed, scared and alone, waiting for news that might never come. But knowing who you are, Adrian continued, doesn't solve your problem, does it? Before Elena could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. Your mom is asking if you found a way. She's trying to be brave, but Elena, she's terrified. Elena's heart shattered a little more. Adrian seemed to sense the shift in her energy. What is it? She showed him the text, not trusting herself to speak. He read it, his jaw tightening. Elena, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. She nodded. If I gave you the money right now, as a loan, as a gift, whatever you needed it to be, would you take it? The question was so simple and so complicated that Elena felt like she might collapse under the weight of it. She started, then stopped. I don't know. Part of me wants to say yes, of course, it's my mother's life. But part of me knows that accepting money from you would change everything between us. It would change how I see myself. And if your mother dies because you couldn't accept help when it was offered? The brutally direct question hit Elena like a physical blow. She doubled over slightly, the reality of her situation crashing over her in waves. I don't know, she whispered. I honestly don't know. That's when they heard the elevator again. Adrian checked his watch, his face going pale. He's early. Heavy footsteps approached, different from Adrian's measured stride. These were the steps of someone trying to project confidence they didn't feel. Adrian? A voice called out, older, rougher around the edges. Son, are you here? Elena and Adrian locked eyes, both realizing that the test Adrian had designed was about to become infinitely more complicated. Because now there were three people who would be making choices that could change everything. And only one of them knew the stakes. Stay, Adrian said quietly to Elena, his voice carrying an authority she'd never heard before. Please. I need someone here who understands what integrity actually means. Before Elena could protest, footsteps reached the bedroom doorway. The man who appeared looked like an older, weathered version of Adrian. Same height, same gray eyes, but where Adrian carried himself with quiet confidence, this man seemed to be wearing his success like an ill-fitting costume. His suit was expensive but flashy, his smile too bright, his handshake too eager when he spotted his son. Adrian, look at you, son. Even more successful than the magazines make you out to be. His eyes immediately went to the money scattered across the bed, and Elena watched his pupils dilate slightly. Jesus, what's all this? Hello, Robert. Adrian's voice was ice-cold formality. Elena noticed he didn't say dad or father. Just the man's first name, like he was addressing a stranger. Robert? Come on, son, You're my biological father, Adrian cut him off. There's a difference. Robert's smile faltered for just a moment before snapping back into place. Fair enough. I deserve that. But Adrian, I've changed. I know I made mistakes when you were young, but I'm different now. I've got money, stability. I want to make things right. Elena watched this exchange with growing discomfort, feeling like an intruder in a deeply personal moment. But Adrian's earlier request echoed in her mind. He needed someone here who understood integrity. Different how? Adrian asked, moving to stand beside the bed. Tell me, Robert, what's different about you? Well, for starters, I'm not broke anymore. Robert laughed, the sound hollow in the elegant room. Remember how your mother always worried about money? How she worked herself to death trying to keep us afloat? That's not a problem anymore. Elena saw Adrian's jaw clench at the casual mention of his mother's death. I made some good investments, got lucky with cryptocurrency real estate. I'm worth about $2 million now, Robert continued, puffing up with pride. Not Adrian Blackwood money, of course, but enough to live comfortably. Enough to help family. Help family, Adrian repeated flatly. That's right. I know I wasn't there when you needed me, but I'm here now. And I want to prove it. Robert's eyes kept drifting to the money on the bed like a magnet was pulling his gaze. In fact, I brought something to show you how serious I am. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. $25,000. Cash. Consider it a down payment on 27 years of missed birthdays and Christmas mornings. Elena watched Adrian's face carefully. She expected to see emotion, anger, pain, maybe even hope. Instead, she saw the cold calculation of a man running a very specific kind of experiment. That's generous, Adrian said. But before we talk about your money, I'm curious about something. Anything, son. Ask me anything. Adrian gestured toward the bed. As you can see, I was in the middle of organizing some cash for a business deal. Elena here, he indicated her with a slight nod, is my housekeeper. She's been working in this room for the past hour, completely alone with over $500,000. Robert's attention shifted to Elena for the first time, his eyes scanning her with the calculating look of someone appraising livestock. Elena felt her skin crawl. $500,000? Robert whistled low. That's a hell of a lot of trust to put in the help. The casual dismissal in his voice, the help, made Elena's cheeks burn. But Adrian's reaction was even stronger. His entire body went rigid. Elena isn't help, Adrian said, his voice dangerously quiet. She's a professional who's been entrusted with my home because she's earned that trust through years of impeccable service. Sure, Robert backpedaled quickly. I just meant, well, you know how it is. Put that kind of temptation in front of most people. He trailed off, but his meaning was clear. Most people like who? Adrian pressed. Robert glanced at Elena again, and she saw the ugly truth in his expression before he even spoke. Come on, Adrian. People from certain backgrounds. They're not used to having money around. It does things to them. The room went deadly silent. Elena felt like she'd been slapped. The casual racism, delivered with a smile and wrapped in false concern, hit her harder than any direct insult could have. But Adrian's reaction was volcanic. Get out! His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the force of a hurricane. What? Adrian, I didn't mean. Get out! Adrian roared, his composure finally cracking. Get out of my home, get out of my life, and don't ever contact me again. Robert's face went white, then red. Now wait just a minute. I came here in good faith, with money, trying to make amends. You came here and within 5 minutes showed me exactly who you still are, Adrian said, his voice returning to that deadly calm. 27 years, and you haven't changed at all. You're still the same man who walked out on his family, still the same man who values people based on what they can give you or how they look. I didn't say anything wrong. I was just being realistic about. About what? About Elena, who has had access to everything I own for 8 months and never taken so much as a paperclip. About Elena, who's more honest than most billionaires I know. About Elena, who's facing her own crisis right now and still wouldn't dream of touching money that isn't hers. The words tumbled out before Adrian could stop them, and Elena realized he'd just revealed far more than he'd intended. Robert's predatory instincts kicked in immediately. Crisis? What kind of crisis? His eyes moved between Elena and the money with renewed interest. Financial problems? Elena wanted to disappear into the floor. None of your business, Adrian said quickly, but the damage was done. Robert smiled, and it was the most unpleasant expression Elena had ever seen. You know what, son? I think I understand what's really going on here. You've got yourself a little charity case, don't you? The noble housekeeper with a sob story, and the billionaire with a hero complex. Stop talking, Adrian warned. I bet she's good at her sob story too. Let me guess, sick family member? Medical bills? And here you are, playing white knight with your money scattered around like some kind of twisted test. Elena couldn't take it anymore. You don't know anything about me, she said, her voice shaking with anger. Robert turned his full attention to her, his smile growing wider. Oh, I know plenty, sweetheart. I know exactly what kind of person you are. The kind who works multiple jobs and still can't make ends meet. The kind who looks at all this money and thinks about what it could buy. That's enough, Adrian stepped between them. But Robert was on a roll now, sensing weakness. Tell me, Elena, how much do you need? What's your price? Because I bet it's a lot less than what my son here is worth. The cruelty in his voice was breathtaking. Elena felt tears threatening, but she refused to give this man the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Actually, Robert continued, reaching into his jacket again, let me make this interesting. He pulled out another envelope, this one thicker than the first. I've got another 25,000 here. 50 total. That's probably more money than you've ever seen in your life. Elena's heart stopped. $50,000. More than enough for her mother's treatment, with money left over. All you have to do, Robert continued, is take just one stack of my son's money off that bed. Just one little stack. Prove that everybody has a price, that all this nobility is just an act when real money is involved. Absolutely not, Adrian said immediately. Come on, Adrian. Let's see what your precious Elena is really made of. Is she the saint you think she is, or is she just another person who can be bought? Elena stared at the money Robert was holding, her mind reeling. This wasn't about testing her integrity anymore. This was about something much darker. A father trying to destroy his son's faith in human goodness. 50,000, Elena, Robert repeated. All for one small compromise. One tiny moment of weakness. Your mother gets her treatment, you get your life back, and Adrian learns a valuable lesson about trusting the wrong people. Elena looked at Adrian, seeing the pain in his eyes. He wasn't just watching a test of her character. He was watching his father try to destroy the one person in the room who represented everything his mother had been. That's when Elena realized this had never been about her at all. This was about Adrian's deepest fear. That his father was right, that everyone could be bought, that integrity was just a luxury people maintained until the price got high enough. And suddenly, Elena knew exactly what she had to do. The choice that would shock everyone in that room. Elena walked slowly toward Robert, her eyes never leaving the envelope in his hands. Adrian's sharp intake of breath was audible behind her, but she didn't turn around. $50,000, she said quietly, her voice steady despite the chaos in her heart. That's right, sweetheart. Robert's smile was triumphant. 50,000 for one small compromise. Easy money. Elena reached out and took the envelope from his hands. The silence in the room was deafening. Adrian's face went ashen. Elena, no. She could hear the heartbreak in his voice, the sound of his faith in humanity cracking like ice under pressure. But she didn't look at him. Not yet. Instead, she opened the envelope and counted the money inside. $50,000, just as Robert had promised. Enough to save her mother and change her life. You know what this means to me? She asked Robert, her voice conversational. Of course I do. It means you're finally being honest about who you are. Elena nodded slowly. You're right. This money could save my mother's life. It could pay for treatment that insurance won't cover. It could give me back my nights and weekends. Let me stop working 3 jobs just to survive. See, Adrian? Robert's voice was smug with victory. I told you everyone has a price. Your precious Elena just proved it. Elena finally turned to look at Adrian. The devastation in his eyes was almost unbearable. She could see him questioning everything, his judgment, his faith in people, his mother's teachings about inherent human goodness. Mr. Blackwood, she said formally, I want you to know that these past 8 months working for you have been some of the best of my professional life. You've treated me with respect and dignity that I rarely find in this industry. Elena, please, Adrian's voice was broken. And that's exactly why I can't do this. Elena turned back to Robert and held out the envelope. Take your money and get out. Robert's confident expression faltered. What? I said take your money and leave. I don't want it, I don't need it, and I certainly don't need it from someone like you. Are you insane? Robert sputtered. That's $50,000. Your mother is dying. The words hit Elena like physical blows, but she stood her ground. My mother is dying, she agreed, her voice gaining strength. And she raised me to understand that some things are more important than money. Integrity, dignity, the ability to look at yourself in the mirror and know that you earned everything you have. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, Robert snapped, his mask finally slipping completely. You think your integrity is going to pay for cancer treatment? You think your dignity is going to bring your mother back when she's dead? Each word was designed to wound, and they found their mark. Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Maybe not, she said quietly. But she didn't raise me to be the kind of person who would take money from a man who thinks I'm worth less than him because of the color of my skin or the size of my bank account. I never said anything about. You didn't have to. Elena's voice was steel now. I've been hearing men like you my entire life. I know exactly what you think of me, what you think I'm worth, what you think I'm capable of. And I'm not going to prove you right. She thrust the envelope at him again. Take it. Robert stared at her like she was speaking a foreign language. This is a mistake. When your mother dies, you're going to remember this moment and regret it for the rest of your life. The cruelty was breathtaking, but Elena had found her strength now. If my mother dies, it won't be because I compromised who she raised me to be. It will be because sometimes life is unfair and good people suffer. But I won't dishonor her memory by becoming someone she wouldn't recognize. Robert finally snatched the envelope back, his face twisted with anger and frustration. You're both insane. Living in some fantasy world where being noble matters more than being practical. Get out, Adrian said quietly. His voice was different now, not broken anymore, but filled with something Elena couldn't quite identify. Fine. But when reality hits, don't come crying to me. Either of you. Robert stormed toward the door, then paused. You know what the real joke is? I actually came here hoping to build a relationship with my son. But you're both too stupid to see a good opportunity when it's handed to you. The only opportunity you offered, Elena said, was the chance to become someone I'm not. No thank you. After Robert left, the penthouse fell into crushing silence. Elena sank into the chair by the window, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation was fading, leaving behind the raw reality of what she'd just done. She'd turned down $50,000. Her mother was still dying. She still had no way to pay for treatment. And in 3 hours, the hospital would give her mother's surgical slot to someone else. Elena. Adrian's voice was soft, uncertain. She looked up at him, seeing a man who looked as emotionally wrung out as she felt. Why? He asked simply. Elena was quiet for a long moment, trying to find words for something that felt too big for language. Because my mother spent her entire life proving that a person's worth isn't measured by their bank account. She cleaned buildings and raised a daughter and never once made anyone feel small because they had less than her or more than her. She treated everyone like they mattered. She gestured toward the door where Robert had disappeared. Your father looked at me and saw someone he could buy. Someone whose principles were just a pretense that would crumble under financial pressure. If I had taken his money, I would have proven him right, not just about me, but about everyone like me. Even if it cost your mother her life? The question was asked without judgment, but it still felt like a knife twisting in Elena's chest. My mother would rather die as herself than live knowing her daughter had sold her soul, Elena whispered. That's who she is. That's who she raised me to be. Adrian sank into the chair across from her, looking like a man who'd just witnessed something that changed his understanding of the world. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I'm sorry my father said those things. I'm sorry I put you in that position. And I'm sorry about your mother. Elena nodded, not trusting her voice anymore. Outside the window, Manhattan continued its relentless pace, millions of people pursuing their dreams and fighting their battles, unaware that in one penthouse apartment, 2 people were learning what it really meant to choose integrity over survival. Elena's phone buzzed with another text from the hospital. She didn't have the strength to read it. Adrian watched Elena stare at her phone without opening the message, her shoulders carrying the weight of impossible choices. Something shifted inside him, a clarity that cut through years of carefully constructed emotional walls. Elena, he said quietly, look at me. She raised her eyes, and he saw in them the same exhausted dignity his mother had carried in her final years. The recognition hit him like lightning. My mother worked for people like my father her entire life, he said, his voice gaining strength with each word. People who thought they could buy anyone, manipulate anyone, reduce anyone to a transaction. She died proving them wrong. Elena's breath caught as she began to understand where he was going. And just now, you did something she would have done. Something that reminded me why I've spent my entire adult life trying to honor her memory. Adrian stood up, moving with sudden purpose toward his desk. But there's something you need to understand about integrity, Elena. He pulled out his laptop and began typing rapidly. Real integrity isn't about suffering needlessly when help is offered honestly. It's about recognizing the difference between a handout designed to control you and support offered with respect. Elena watched him work, confusion mixing with a spark of something that might have been hope. My father offered you money to prove you could be bought. That wasn't generosity, that was manipulation. It was designed to make you smaller, to reduce you to his prejudices. Adrian's fingers flew across the keyboard. But what if someone else offered you something different? Mr. Blackwood, I can't accept. What if, Adrian continued, not looking up from his screen, someone offered you a job opportunity that honored your skills and experience? What if someone recognized that you've been vastly underemployed and underpaid and wanted to correct that injustice? Elena's heart began to race. What are you talking about? Adrian finally looked up, and his gray eyes held a warmth she'd never seen before. I'm talking about the fact that you've been managing the personal affairs of one of Manhattan's most demanding households for 8 months with the kind of precision and discretion that most executive assistants with MBAs can't match. He turned the laptop screen toward her. I'm talking about offering you a position as my director of personal operations, with a starting salary of $200,000 a year, full health benefits for you and your family, and a $50,000 signing bonus. Elena's world tilted sideways. 200. Adrian, I can't. You can't what? Do the job? Elena, you've been doing the job for months. The only difference is that now you'd be compensated appropriately for your expertise instead of being exploited, because you've been too focused on survival to negotiate. The numbers swirled in Elena's head. $200,000 a year. More money than she'd ever dreamed of earning. More than enough to pay for her mother's treatment, to give them both a chance at a real future. But this isn't. She struggled for words. This isn't charity? Look at me, Adrian said firmly. Do I strike you as the kind of businessman who makes $200,000 hiring decisions based on charity? Elena studied his face, seeing not pity or guilt, but genuine respect and something that looked like excitement. You're serious. Dead serious. I've been thinking about expanding my personal staff for months. I need someone who can coordinate my household, manage my schedule, oversee my domestic staff, handle personal travel arrangements. Someone I trust implicitly. He gestured around the room. Someone who could walk into a room with $500,000 and focus on doing her job instead of counting the money. Elena felt tears threatening, but for the first time in months, they weren't tears of despair. The signing bonus, she said carefully. Would that be enough to? It would be enough to pay for your mother's treatment and give you financial breathing room while you transition to your new position. Adrian's voice softened. Elena, this isn't about saving you. This is about me recognizing talent that's been right in front of me for months. She stared at the laptop screen, at numbers that represented not just survival, but a future she'd never dared to imagine. There's one condition, Adrian added. Elena's heart sank slightly. What? You start immediately. As in, your first executive decision is calling that hospital and telling them to prep your mother for surgery. Today. The dam finally broke. Elena covered her face with her hands as tears of relief, gratitude, and overwhelming emotion poured out of her. 8 months of 18-hour days, of choosing between groceries and gas money, of watching her mother pretend she wasn't scared. All of it crashed over her in a wave of release. Hey, Adrian said gently, moving to sit beside her chair. It's okay. Everything's going to be okay. I don't understand. Elena managed through her tears. Why are you doing this? Really? Adrian was quiet for a moment, his eyes moving to the photograph of his parents he kept on his nightstand. Because 27 years ago, a woman who cleaned office buildings for a living taught her son that a person's character isn't determined by their circumstances. It's determined by their choices. He looked back at Elena with a smile that transformed his entire face. Today, you showed me what my mother's lessons look like in action. You reminded me why those lessons matter. And you proved that some things, integrity, dignity, the courage to do what's right even when it costs you everything, those things can't be bought at any price. Elena wiped her eyes, feeling like she was emerging from a long, dark tunnel into sunlight. Your mother sounds like she was an incredible woman. She was. And she would have loved you. Adrian stood up and extended his hand toward her. So, Director Vasquez, do you accept the position? Elena looked at his outstretched hand, then at the laptop screen showing her new future, then back at his face. She saw no pity there, no condescension, just genuine respect and the beginning of what might be friendship. She took his hand and shook it firmly. I accept, Mr. Blackwood. When do I start? Right now. Your first task is making a phone call to Mount Sinai Hospital. Elena's hands shook as she dialed the number, but this time it was from excitement rather than fear. When Dr. Patterson answered, her voice was steady and strong. Dr. Patterson? This is Elena Vasquez. I'm calling to confirm payment for my mother's treatment. The full amount will be transferred within the hour. The relief in the doctor's voice was palpable. Ms. Vasquez, that's wonderful news. We'll prep your mother immediately. She could be in surgery by 4 o'clock this afternoon. When Elena hung up, she found Adrian already on his phone with his bank, arranging the immediate transfer of funds. Consider it an advance on your signing bonus, he said, ending his call. Now, let's go see your mother. I think she'd like to meet her daughter's new boss. As they prepared to leave, Elena paused beside the bed where hundreds of thousands of dollars still lay scattered. What about all this? Your test. Adrian began gathering the money with casual efficiency. The test is over. I learned everything I needed to know. He looked up at her with a grin. I learned that some people can't be bought, some principles can't be compromised, and sometimes the most valuable thing in a room isn't the money. It's the person who refuses to touch it. Elena felt a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with financial security. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving. She was valued, respected, and about to watch her mother get a second chance at life. "There's just one more thing," Adrian said as they headed toward the elevator. "What's that?" "You're going to need a new wardrobe. Director-level positions come with certain expectations." Elena laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in months. "I think I can handle that." As the elevator doors closed behind them, Elena caught her reflection in the polished steel. The woman looking back at her still had the same face, the same hands that had cleaned countless homes and typed countless reports. But something fundamental had changed. She wasn't just Elena Vasquez, the woman who worked 3 jobs and prayed for miracles. She was Elena Vasquez, director of personal operations. A woman whose integrity had been tested and proven. A woman whose mother was about to get the chance to fight for her life. A woman who had learned that sometimes, when you refuse to compromise who you are, the universe conspires to give you everything you never dared to dream of. But first, she had a mother to see and good news to share. Mount Sinai Hospital's oncology wing buzzed with purposeful activity as Elena and Adrian emerged from the elevator. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs, not from fear this time, but from anticipation. After months of dreading these sterile corridors, she was finally walking them as a bearer of hope. "Room 847, she told Adrian, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. They found Maria Vasquez sitting up in her hospital bed, gazing out the window at the city skyline. At 53, cancer had stolen some of her strength, but none of her grace. When she turned toward the doorway, her face lit up with the kind of joy that made Elena remember why she'd been fighting so hard. "Mija." Maria's voice carried the musical cadence that had sung Elena to sleep as a child. "You look different. Something good happened." Elena moved to her mother's bedside, taking those familiar hands in hers. "Mama, I want you to meet my boss, Adrian Blackwood." "Adrian, this is my mother, Maria." Adrian stepped forward with the same respect Elena had watched him show to heads of state and Nobel Prize winners. "Mrs. Vasquez, it's an honor to meet you. Your daughter speaks of you constantly." Maria studied Adrian with the sharp intelligence that had guided her through decades of raising Elena alone. "Mr. Blackwood, I know that name. You're the one who's been treating my Elena with respect." "Your daughter has earned every bit of respect she receives and more," Adrian replied. "In fact, that's part of why we're here." Elena squeezed her mother's hands. "Mama, we have news. Good news. The best news." Over the next 10 minutes, Elena watched her mother's face transform as she explained everything. The job offer, the salary increase, the signing bonus that would cover all medical expenses. Maria's eyes filled with tears of relief and pride, but also something deeper. "Elena Sofia Vasquez," Maria said finally, using Elena's full name the way she had when Elena was a child who'd done something remarkable. "Tell me exactly how this happened." Elena found herself recounting the morning's events, from finding the money scattered on Adrian's bed to Robert's cruel test to her decision to refuse the $50,000. As she spoke, she watched her mother's expression shift from surprise to understanding to fierce pride. "So you chose to be who I raised you to be, even when it might have cost me my life," Maria said quietly. "Mama, No, Mija. That was exactly right." Maria's voice carried the authority of generations of strong women. "You showed them that we are not for sale. That our dignity, our principles, these things have value that cannot be measured in dollars." She turned to Adrian, her gaze direct and unwavering. "Mr. Blackwood, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course. Are you offering my daughter this position because you feel sorry for us? Because you want to be the hero in our story?" Adrian met her gaze without flinching. "Mrs. Vasquez, I'm offering your daughter this position because she's the most competent, trustworthy, and professional person I've ever worked with. The fact that she needed the opportunity doesn't change the fact that she's earned it." Maria studied his face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Good. Because Elena has been undervalued her entire working life. It's time someone recognized what she's worth." That's when Dr. Patterson arrived, his normally serious expression brightened by cautious optimism. "Mrs. Vasquez, we're ready to begin prep for surgery. The treatment protocol will start this afternoon, and if all goes well, we could see results within the first few weeks." Elena felt her knees go weak with relief. "Thank you, Dr. Patterson. Thank you so much." As the medical team began their preparations, Adrian and Elena stepped into the hallway to give Maria space. She's remarkable, Adrian said. I can see where you get your strength. She saved my life in every way that matters, Elena replied. And now maybe we can save hers. But their moment of peace was interrupted by a commotion near the elevator. Elena's heart sank as she recognized the voice echoing down the corridor. Robert Blackwood was arguing with hospital security. I'm his father, for God's sake. I have every right to be here. Sir, you need to lower your voice. This is a hospital. I know what this is. I'm looking for my son, Adrian Blackwood. He's here somewhere with his little charity case. Elena saw Adrian's entire body tense. How did he find us? Probably followed us, Adrian muttered. He always was persistent when he wanted something. Robert spotted them and pushed past the security guard. There you are. Adrian, we need to talk. This whole thing has gotten out of hand. Robert, you need to leave. Now. Adrian's voice was ice cold. Not until you listen to reason. You're making a mistake with this girl. Her name is Elena, and she's no longer any of your business. But Robert wasn't listening. He was looking at Elena with the calculating expression of a man who thought he'd found leverage. You think you're so smart, don't you? Playing the noble saint, turning down my money. But here you are in a hospital, aren't you? Funny how quickly your principles bent when my son offered you a different deal. Elena felt heat rising in her cheeks, but before she could respond, Maria's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Excuse me. Everyone turned to see Maria Vasquez standing in her doorway, her pole in one hand, the other planted firmly on her hip. Despite the hospital gown and the obvious effects of her illness, she radiated the kind of authority that made grown men straighten their shoulders. You must be the man who tried to buy my daughter this morning. Robert's eyes narrowed. And you must be the reason she's suddenly so expensive to maintain. The insult hung in the air like poison gas. Maria smiled, and it was the most dangerous expression Elena had ever seen on her mother's face. Let me tell you something about expensive, senor, Maria said, her voice carrying the weight of every sacrifice she'd ever made. Expensive is raising a child alone while working 2 jobs. Expensive is choosing between groceries and rent every month for 20 years. Expensive is putting someone else's needs before your own until it becomes as natural as breathing. She took a step closer to Robert, and Elena saw him actually back up. But cheap, Maria continued. Cheap is a man who abandons his family and then comes back decades later thinking he can buy forgiveness. Cheap is someone who looks at my daughter, a woman who works harder than most people dream of working, and sees nothing but a transaction. Now listen here. No, you listen. Maria's voice never raised above conversational level, but it commanded absolute attention. My daughter didn't take your money because she doesn't need your validation. She doesn't need your approval. She doesn't need anything from a man who measures human worth in dollars and cents. She gestured toward Adrian with graceful dignity. Your son, however, he understands something you never learned. He understands that some people are priceless not because of what they cost, but because of what they're worth. Adrian stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Central Park. Elena, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever think about that morning? About what would have happened if you'd made a different choice? The hallway fell silent except for the distant sounds of hospital activity. Robert looked between Maria and Elena, his face cycling through emotions Elena couldn't identify. For a moment, she almost thought she saw shame in his expression. You people don't understand how the world really works, he said finally, but the fight had gone out of his voice. We understand perfectly, Maria replied. We just refuse to let it make us smaller. Robert turned to Adrian one last time. When this all falls apart, don't come looking for me. I won't, Adrian said simply. They watched Robert disappear into the elevator, and Elena realized she was holding her breath. Mama, she said finally, you shouldn't be out of bed. Sometimes, Maria said with a smile, there are more important things than following doctor's orders. Dr. Patterson appeared at her elbow, looking both exasperated and impressed. Mrs. Vasquez, as much as I admire your advocacy skills, we really do need to get you prepped for surgery. As the medical team guided Maria back toward her room, she caught Elena's hand. Mija, I'm proud of you. Not because you got the job, not because you can pay for my treatment. I'm proud because when someone tried to make you smaller, you chose to stay exactly who you are. Elena squeezed her mother's hand, feeling the completion of something that had started that morning with scattered money and an impossible choice. I learned from the best, Mama. As Maria disappeared into the pre-surgery area, Elena and Adrian found themselves alone in the hallway, the weight of the day's events settling around them. "Your mother," Adrian said with genuine admiration, "is a force of nature." "She's been fighting battles like that my entire life," Elena replied. "Usually alone." "Not anymore," Adrian said firmly. "From now on, she's got an entire support system behind her." Elena looked at him, this man who had started the day as her employer and somehow become something closer to a friend. "Thank you. For everything. For seeing who I really am instead of what my circumstances made me appear to be." "Elena," Adrian said seriously, "today you reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten. You reminded me that the most valuable things in life, integrity, loyalty, courage, they can't be bought. They can only be earned. And they can only be recognized by people who possess them themselves." As they settled in to wait for news of Maria's surgery, Elena reflected on the extraordinary turn her life had taken. This morning she'd been a woman working 3 jobs, barely surviving, watching her mother waste away. Tonight, she would be a woman with a career, with hope, with a mother fighting for her life backed by the best medical care money could buy. But most importantly, she would still be Elena Vasquez, the woman who had learned that some tests are designed not to break you, but to reveal exactly how strong you've always been. 6 months later, Elena adjusted her tailored blazer as she walked through the marble lobby of Blackwood Industries, her heels clicking confidently on the polished floor. The woman who reflected back at her from the elevator's mirrored walls bore little resemblance to the exhausted housekeeper who had stumbled into an impossible choice 6 months ago. This Elena Vasquez carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who had learned her worth and refused to accept anything less. "Good morning, Ms. Vasquez," the elevator operator said with genuine warmth. "How's your mother doing?" "Cancer-free for 3 months now," Elena replied with a smile that never got old. "Thank you for asking, James." The 42nd floor of Adrian's building had been transformed into Elena's domain, a sophisticated office suite where she coordinated every aspect of his increasingly complex personal life. Charity galas, real estate acquisitions, staff management, travel logistics. All of it flowed through her hands with the precision of a master conductor orchestrating a symphony. But this morning was special. Elena had spent weeks planning today's event, and every detail needed to be perfect. "Elena," Adrian's voice called from his office as she settled at her desk. "Please tell me you've worked your usual magic." She walked into his office, carrying a leather portfolio that contained the culmination of months of careful coordination. "The community center renovation is complete. The scholarship fund is fully endowed. And your mother's memorial garden has been planted with flowers that will bloom year-round." Adrian looked up from his desk, and Elena saw the emotion in his gray eyes. Today marked the 20th anniversary of his mother's death, and instead of spending it in private grief, he was about to honor her memory in a way that would impact hundreds of lives. "The families will be there?" he asked. 47 families whose children will benefit from the scholarship program, including 3 young women who were working multiple jobs to support their education. Sound familiar? Elena's smile was warm with shared understanding. "And Maria? Mama wouldn't miss it for the world. She's been working with the community center's board to establish a financial literacy program. Apparently, she has very strong opinions about teaching people to manage their money with dignity." Adrian laughed, the sound rich with affection. "Your mother continues to amaze me. How does she have this much energy 6 months out of cancer treatment?" "She says she has 20 years of saved-up living to catch up on," Elena replied. "Plus, she's discovered she has a talent for terrifying wealthy donors into writing bigger checks for community programs." "Terrifying them with kindness, you mean? The most effective kind of terror." As they reviewed the final details for the dedication ceremony, Elena's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and felt her smile widen. "What is it?" Adrian asked, noticing her expression. "Carmen just got promoted to head nurse at Mount Sinai. She's also engaged to that doctor she's been dating. The one who helped coordinate your mother's treatment? That's the one. Apparently, good things really do come to people who dedicate their lives to helping others." Elena joined him at the window, looking out at the city that had transformed from a place of struggle to a place of possibility. "Every day," she said honestly. "Not with regret, but with gratitude. That morning taught me that integrity isn't something you have, it's something you choose moment by moment, especially when choosing it costs you everything. And now I know that choosing to be who my mother raised me to be was the most valuable decision I ever made. It didn't just save her life, It saved mine too. Adrian nodded, understanding passing between them. Your mother would be proud of who you've become. Both our mothers would be proud, Elena corrected gently. They raised children who understand that money is just a tool. What matters is how you use it and who you become in the process of earning it. As they prepared to leave for the dedication ceremony, Elena's computer chimed with an email notification. She glanced at it and felt her heart skip a beat. Adrian, you need to see this. She turned her screen toward him, showing an email from the Blackwood Community Foundation's Scholarship Recipient Coordinator. What am I looking at? Applications for next year's scholarship program. We've received over 300 applications from young people working multiple jobs to pay for their education. People just like I was 6 months ago. Adrian's smile was brilliant. People just like my mother was 30 years ago. The foundation is going to change lives, Adrian. Real lives, real futures. No, Adrian corrected, his voice warm with conviction. We're going to change lives. This foundation exists because you showed me that investing in people's character is the most profitable business decision I've ever made. As they headed toward the elevator, Elena caught sight of her reflection again. But this time, she didn't see just her own transformation. She saw her mother's strength, Adrian's generosity, and the potential of every person who had ever been underestimated because of their circumstances. The community center dedication was everything Elena had hoped it would be. Maria Vasquez, radiant with health and purpose, cut the ribbon on the new computer lab while 47 scholarship recipients applauded. Adrian spoke about his mother's legacy with tears in his eyes and hope in his voice. But the moment that would stay with Elena forever came when a young woman approached her after the ceremony. Ms. Vasquez? My name is Isabella Santos. I'm one of this year's scholarship recipients. Elena recognized the look in Isabella's eyes. The exhaustion of someone working multiple jobs, the worry of someone carrying family responsibilities, the quiet determination of someone refusing to give up on their dreams. I work 3 jobs, Isabella continued. Cleaning offices at night, data entry during the day, and tutoring on weekends. When I heard about your story, about how you refused to compromise your integrity even when it might have cost everything, it gave me hope that someone like me could build a different kind of future. Elena took Isabella's hands in hers, seeing herself 6 months ago, seeing Adrian's mother 30 years ago, seeing every person who had ever been told they weren't worth investing in. Isabella, let me tell you something my mother taught me. Your circumstances don't define your worth. Your choices do. And choosing to work 3 jobs while pursuing your education tells me everything I need to know about your character. Thank you, Isabella whispered, for showing people like us that we matter. As the young woman walked away, Elena felt Adrian's presence beside her. Feeling proud? He asked. Feeling grateful, Elena corrected. 6 months ago, I thought I was being tested. I thought the universe was asking me to choose between my principles and my mother's life. And now I understand that I wasn't being tested. I was being prepared. Everything that happened that morning, your father's cruelty, the impossible choice, even the fear and desperation, it was all preparing me to understand exactly what this foundation could mean to people who are where I used to be. As the sun set over Manhattan, Elena and Adrian stood together in the community center they had created, watching families explore the new facilities, listening to children laugh in the playground, seeing hope take root in a neighborhood that had learned not to expect miracles. Elena, Adrian said quietly, I need to tell you something. What's that? That morning, when you refused to take my father's money, when you chose integrity over everything else, you didn't just change your life or save your mother. You saved me too. Elena looked at him with surprise. What do you mean? I was starting to believe my father was right. That everyone had a price, that money corrupted everything it touched, that genuine goodness was just naivety waiting to be exploited. Adrian's voice was thick with emotion. You proved that some people really are incorruptible. You reminded me that the world still has room for heroes, even quiet ones who clean houses and work 3 jobs and never expect recognition. Elena felt tears threatening, but they were tears of joy, of completion, of a story that had found its perfect ending. We saved each other, she said simply. As they prepared to leave, Elena's phone buzzed with one final message of the day. It was from Maria, who was at home preparing dinner for the small celebration they had planned. Mija, I'm making your favorite. And I bought ingredients for flan, lots of flan. We have so much to celebrate, and life is too short not to eat dessert. Elena laughed, showing the message to Adrian. Your mother is right, he said. Life is too short not to celebrate the good moments. Then let's go celebrate, Elena replied. We have a lot to be grateful for. 6 months ago, Elena Vasquez had faced the hardest test of her life. She had chosen integrity over survival, principle over profit, and dignity over desperation. Tonight, she would go home to a mother whose laughter filled rooms instead of hospital beds. She would wake up tomorrow as a woman whose skills were valued, whose opinions mattered, whose future stretched ahead bright with possibility. But most importantly, she would wake up as herself, Elena Vasquez, the woman who had learned that some things truly cannot be bought, and that sometimes, when you refuse to compromise who you are, the universe conspires to give you everything you never dared to dream of. As they walked toward the elevator, Elena caught sight of the community center's new mission statement, engraved in bronze by the entrance. In memory of those who taught us that a person's worth cannot be measured in dollars, and in honor of those who choose integrity over convenience, character over compromise, and dignity over desperation. Perfect, Elena thought. Absolutely perfect. What an incredible journey we've been on together. Elena's story reminds us that our greatest tests often become our greatest triumphs. If this story moved you, touched your heart, or made you think about your own values, please share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're new to our community of storytellers and dreamers, don't forget to subscribe. Every story we share is designed to remind you of the power of human dignity and the strength we all carry within us. From all of us here, thank you for taking this journey with Elena and Adrian. Until next time, remember, you are worth more than you know, and your integrity is priceless.